Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game from across the pond. Myself, I am Andrew, here to represent the Stars and Stripes. And across the pond, we have Faisal living his best life in the UK.
Yeah, good to be back, ready to get stuck into another big podcast ahead. So yeah, excited to get into them.
Yeah, and the fun part about doing this every 2 weeks is like unlimited amounts of things happen in the world of football/soccer.
Yeah, there's always something to discuss, and every 2 weeks we get stuck in. So yeah, excited.
Well, let's dive right in with the Champions League draw. It did happen, and we now have our 8 teams that have been drawn against each other and into their respective sides of the playoff chart, if you will. So I'll break it down for us really quickly. We have Benfica versus Inter. We have Milan versus Napoli. That's one side of the playoff chart. And the other half is Man City versus Bayern Munich, Real Madrid versus Chelsea. Now, that is quite interesting because it looks like the one side is much heavier in comparison in terms of top tier, top level opponents. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you've got one side which is you'd argue Napoli's is pinching Napoli's walk through to the final here. So if you look at it from their perspective, they're working with some great teams here from their side. They've got the Benfica, they've got Inter, they know AC Milan really well as well from their Italians, the AC Milan from the Serie A as well. So from their side, it's essentially a home tie for them. They'll aim very much to take it all the way to the final here. And then you've got the real big hitters in the second half, really, which is your Man City, your Bayern Munich, your Real Madrid, and your Chelsea. You'd almost argue it's a little bit sad that you have such big teams. Only one of those four teams make it to the final. So you got your Man City, your Bayern Munich. One of those teams isn't making it. So it's going to be an interesting one because you'd argue they're two probably favourites alongside Real Madrid, for example, for this. So you would argue that Napoli's chances are, you'd argue that they'd be almost guaranteed for the final here if they play their cards right correctly. And then you've obviously got your big Real Madrid and your Chelsea. Just the one flag, people thinking let's bring Chelsea in this conversation a bit here, because if you look at it, Chelsea are current Champions League holders. I think people forget that, right? So they beat Man City 1-0 last season. Granted, they're not having a great season at the moment, but let's not forget they're still in this competition. Dispatched Dortmund well, so it's gonna be a big game. What do you think about Napoli's chances, Andrew?
I am a fan of Napoli. The way they've been playing has been exciting in Serie A. Yeah, echoing what you said, I think now Napoli have a clear vision on getting to the final, so it really is up to them to make that happen. I mean, they've been slapping in Serie A, and this is essentially the Serie A half of the playoff structure. So the 3 out of the 4 teams being from Serie A, I think that they will make it through. The one thing that I'm curious to see, though, I think Benfica may cause some problems because they haven't playing well. Club Brugge got through easily. Granted, it looked like they were probably the easiest draw. So kind of take that with a grain of salt. But I do think that they've been playing some good football. So that could be maybe something that causes Napoli some problems. So I think that Benfica will play Napoli, and then Napoli end up making it to the final. But what are your predictions? Who do you think will end up making it to the final, and who is your champion this year?
I'm at the moment a big fan of Napoli. I think they've not done it for a while. I think they're just a pedigree of Champions League football, from pedigree of Italian football. I personally would love to see them go all the way. I think they deserve it. They're doing amazing in Serie A. You'd argue that Karash. I'm going to say this correctly because we need to, because he's a cracking player. The Georgian Maradona, as they call him, Kvaratskhelia. Incredible player at the moment. So, and Omisen as well, which is doing incredible play for Napoli. Seeing one of those two lift it would be my guess. And I think I personally don't see Real Madrid not getting to this final. I would comfortably say, for example, that perhaps Bayern Munich do beat Man City. Even if Man City somehow might squeeze against Bayern Munich, they're not beating Real Madrid, in my opinion. I would argue that it's probably a Real Madrid versus Napoli final, which would be an incredible watch. And then if you look at it, my heart says Napoli because it'd be great to kind of see, but my head is probably saying Real Madrid probably take it and continue and regain it for from the previous season as well. So yeah, I'm going to go with Real Madrid going all the way with a Napoli in the final. What are your
I
thoughts?
like it. I follow a similar route. I would like to see Napoli get through. I think that they will into the final. And from the other side, I mean, it's just almost a toss of a coin. There are just so many good teams. Bayern Munich is a little scary to me. I think that they'll probably end up in that final against Napoli. I hate Manchester City, so I will be very happy to see them not make it to the final. Chelsea, I don't think they have the firepower to compete, especially like their form has not been quite ideal, maybe not as bad as when the season originally started, but I still don't think they have enough to make it through against some of these big teams, especially when you're drawn against Real Madrid. Real Madrid, like currently holding the Champions League trophy. And when they come into the Champions League, they're always good. But it is a cool matchup because Chelsea, I think, won it in 2020, 2021, and then Real Madrid the previous Champions League. So that'll be kind of cool to have that duel to see what comes about it. I will say, in the end, I want it to be Real Madrid because they're just always so good in the Champions League, and it's so fun to see them be good in the Champions League, even if they can't beat Barcelona in the Liga. So that's pretty cool. Having a Real Madrid Napoli final would make me very happy, and I would very, very much like to watch that matchup. So hopefully it does happen.
You know, this Man City by Munich game, if you look at that game for one take as well, that is an interesting one because many people would argue maybe perhaps as a Bayern Munich should be quite an easy game, you'd argue, for Bayern Munich perspective in terms of where they are in the league at the moment. I was doing a bit of a look into that, and at the moment, there's been 6 games to date in terms of Champions League, and it's basically been 3-3 in terms of 3 wins for either side. And you might remember the most recent game back in 2014, where 2-1 down Man City were, and then Sergio Aguero, of course. They know that in that particular time, 2014, one of the best strikers, most informed strikers, scored a hat trick that game and they came back and won 3-2 in a group game. So it's going to be a very tasty game, and I think for me that's probably going to be my favorite game to watch out of the lot. I think the rest of the games will be really competitive, but Man City by Munich, I think most people will be, cramming to watch that. Getting into pubs, getting into to kind of sports bars, basically to get the TV on and watch that game because it'll be really, really fun. So yeah, that's what I love about Champions League. Great matchups, great games. Yeah, excited.
It will be pretty nice. And just for some stats to be thrown out there, Real Madrid have won the Champions League 14 times, and that's the most by any club. So a lot of history there that
says it all.
will maybe pull through to get number 15. But then Bayern is actually on that list as well. They have won it 6 times. So have some history there too. So we'll see who it is. But can you now bring us to what is really important for us Manchester United fans, the Europa League?
Yeah. So it is, of course, as well as be the Champions League quarterfinals, it's also the Europa League quarterfinals as well. And obviously, we know what happened with Real Betis. Man United have made it through, and the matchups are so these are being played in the second week of April. So it's Man United versus Sevilla. It's Juventus versus Sporting, so Sporting Lisbon, Sporting Club de Portugal, as Bruno Fernandes would prefer. We also got Bayer Leverkusen versus Union Saint-Gilloise. So great matchup. Then we'll go into a bit about, you're probably thinking Union, who, what? Like, I'll get into that in a second. And of course, we've got Feyenoord and Mourinho's Roma as well. So some big matchups on this side. What are your thoughts, Simon? What are your initial thoughts, Andrew?
First off, being a Man U fan myself, I am nervous about the Sevilla game because I saw the stat on Twitter that Man United has never beaten Sevilla. So that's a bit terrifying. Overall, though, for the rest of the competition, I think it's going to be exciting. Like, all of the matchups look pretty good, other than as long as Manchester United can keep their form, like they should be able to handle Sevilla this time. Juventus not in the best form overall, especially having the points deducted in Serie A, so that hasn't been great for them. So I really do think this is a fairly level playing field, which just means for neutrals, this is going to be an exciting time to watch some soccer. I'm very interested in the Feyenoord and Roma game. I think that will be very fun, especially because Feyenoord, which I'll cover their very exciting match that they just had against Ajax in a bit. But they have been playing some great football along with Roma. Have not been playing their best, but they're trying to get into that top four in Serie A. And Roma is like one of the teams that I like. That's been one of the first like professional stadiums that I ever was able to tour as a fan. So I have like a special place in my heart when I lived in Rome for 6 months. So love Roma. We'll see. I'm hoping they get through. I'm also hoping Man United can just continue to do some good stuff. The last game made me a little nervous in the FA Cup. So I don't know if that will end up carrying over or not. We'll see. Regardless, it'll be good soccer to watch for everybody involved.
Of course, I mean, Man United are favourites at the moment, so I'm with you. It should be a tournament that we do go all the way. And also, another kind of, I mean, if you look at it, it's probably a bonus, but you know about those new manager bounce backs potentially. So Sevilla have recently sacked their manager, Sampaoli, so that's going to be an interesting one. When the new team arrives with the new manager, is that going to re-galvanize the players? Are they going to try it players? Are they going to try to beat Man United comfortably? Is that going to be really like a key part of this to kick off their season essentially? And as you can mention, I mean, Roma, I really like the way they play at the moment. They've got some sort of like English players in there, Smallings in there. So you got the certain strikers out in front of Tammy Abraham, for example. So, I'm a fan of them as well. But obviously you've got Mourinho, who is a serial winner here. And just for a fact for you, and this is why I think they probably will make it to the final. Mourinho has actually won 8 of his 11 domestic finals. So that's just purely domestic finals as a manager. And he's won every single one of the 4 European finals he's played.
Wow.
So that in itself says a lot. So if it is a Ten Hag potentially versus Mourinho in the final, it's gonna be tasty. And I would probably say if they do make it to the final, Mourinho probably wins it. But it could be a very, very interesting kind of game for that as well. So we'll definitely have to see. Just on the Union Saint-Gilloise, as I spoke about earlier, so people are thinking, what is going on here? So they are, let's put a bit of respect on their name. 1 second. Okay. So they are the most successful club in Belgian football. Right. So let's just put that out there. They're currently in the second in the Belgian Pro League in the moment, just 3 points off Genk. So, and they very comfortably beat Union Berlin, who are fighting with Bayern Munich and Dortmund in the German league 6-3 in terms of aggregate over the past 2 games to get to where they are today. So I think it's going to be big, so I wouldn't rule them out either. I think Bayer Leverkusen perhaps haven't had the greatest season so far. You would argue, so perhaps you could see them nicking a win here, and then I wouldn't put it past them perhaps to kind of go through and do particularly well. But like you said, this Feyenoord versus Roma game is going to be interesting. What are you thinking about Feyenoord? Talk us through where we're at the moment with Feyenoord.
Yeah, so they are 6 points atop the Eredivisie, which is the Netherlands/Holland league. And it is very exciting times because there is a final photo finish gearing up for the final of the season in the Eredivisie. So a game just happened. It's like the Classico, but it is against Feyenoord fighting against Ajax. So that is a very good matchup. It's usually these 2 teams, maybe mixed in with PSV and a few others depending on the season, but usually those 3 teams are the ones at the top fighting for those top spots in the Eredivisie. And now it is Feyenoord's time. Ajax, I would say, are usually the team that have the most talent just in general from a player perspective. And we've seen that happen because usually Ajax ends up transferring out a bunch of players in the summer windows because they develop players so well. But let's talk about this game. So Feyenoord just beat Ajax 2-1. And that is important because it just took Feyenoord to 6 points clear atop the Eredivisie. And that makes their chances to win the league 89%. So quite a lot. And that's also important because Ajax was just 3 points below them as this match kicked off. So if Ajax would have won, they would have drawn level on points at the top of the Eredivisie with Feyenoord. But with this loss, Ajax are now down to 8% with their chances of winning the league. So not the best look for them. Feyenoord overall in this game just looked better. They almost looked like what you expect Ajax to look like. it was great because they were quicker to balls. They were more disciplined. You could see the actual game plan that was being implemented by Feyenoord's manager. And I think the management style that he's been implementing has been important to this successful season with Feyenoord. And one thing about their manager, so he was approached by Leeds to take over after Jesse Marsh was handed the boot, but he said no. He declined the Leeds job because he wanted to stay at Feyenoord to try to get Feyenoord up and top of winning the Eredivisie, which is super cool. I'm always here for managers that want to stick around and see like their project that they're building actually come to fruition. And it looks like it might just do that.
Love that. I think it's a really good point in terms of how strong that Eredivisie actually is as well. It's a great league. There's so much good football from that. If you look at it from Ten Hag perspective, from as a previous manager of Ajax and what he did previously, it's a tough league, right? So to be able to be performing at that level at such a high level and be 6 points off some of the most incredible teams, especially in the Eredivisie, is fantastic. And I think as a team, they'll definitely go far, whether that be in the league specifically, but also you can see they're really bringing that form into the Europa League as well. And that's why I genuinely think it'll be really tough for them against Roma. I think they'll really push Roma a lot, and I think Mourinho potentially could fall here. But you'd argue Mourinho, with his game strategy and his gamesmanship in general, I'll probably have that kind of lead on that side. But actually, it was a great game. These like Der Klassiker in the Bundesliga, for example, the Classico. These games are always really, really good. My question to you is, what's your favorite like derby classic? Like, what, say you could choose any game, any classic, any El Clasico or derby, what are you going for?
I mean, I don't know if I can pick anything above the like actual El Clasico with Barcelona and Real Madrid,
Nice.
because of course we have the Ronaldo Messi debate slash entertaining matches that have went on for years, but now it's still as entertaining because we just saw that actually happen. So let me break it down for you really quickly. Then I want to ask you a question if you think this is still the best matchup in soccer. So I'll give you some time to think about that, but I'll break this game down really quickly because it was an exciting one. If you've not watched it, at least go back on YouTube and watch the highlights because there were some wild and interesting things that happened in this game. So now with this win for Barcelona, which they won 2-1 over Real Madrid, even though Real Madrid did go up 1-0 at the beginning of the game, Barcelona ends up clawing back after some drama, but they are now 12 points clear in La Liga. And a lot of people are saying that this was now the final piece to cement Barcelona actually claiming the top spot. What was super exciting for me, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to coaching because I'm actually a high school coach back over here in the USA. So we has Ancelotti versus Xavi, which both have two different type of managerial abilities and they have different vibes, but they have very good tactical elements that they implement in their game plan. So you could see that very vividly if you are a coach and how it breaks down in this matchup. So Real Madrid, they had their midfield pressing high. So that means like those midfielders, Modric, and those guys would step up a little bit higher than usual. So that would then stop Barcelona's midfield from being able to get turned and then build up through the center of the pitch, which that game plan worked for a while. However, then the Barcelona side, Xavi, realized, okay, great. If Modric is going to sit up high on Busquets, then we're going to have Busquets shift out to the side, and that will create more space for De Jong. Then he can help build that play through the center. With that being said, all of this fun tactical chess match that was going back and forth, I think Barcelona was very cross-heavy in the first half, which ultimately leads me to think that they're missing Pedri a lot because Pedri usually is the player that Barcelona will build through, and he's one that can take on pressure and still end up turning or finding other outlet passes to help Barcelona build through that midfield. So I really do think they were missing him for that game because I think it would have been a lot easier for them and it would have been a higher scoring match for Barcelona if that was the case. Overall, this match, both teams did look pretty solid. And if the goal that was ruled offside for Real Madrid to give them the lead wasn't ruled offside and Real Madrid did end up winning, I would have said, okay, cool, it makes sense. Like they played a decent game. But Barcelona ended up winning, and I can still say, hey, it makes sense. They still played a solid game and deserve to win. One cool stat that I found, which I don't know if I fully think that this is true or not the stat part, but what it means, Barcelona have only conceded 9 goals in the past 28 La Liga matches. So that ultimately should mean that their defense is just super solid. Didn't look like it was that solid to me in this game. And maybe it's just an off game because like that number of goals not conceded shows that their defense has been actually performing very well. But again, if you've not watched this match, go back and watch it. It's fun. There is a ball, the first goal, it's like a cross and it ends up going off of the face of one of the Barcelona defenders and into the goal past Ter Stegen. So that's how the first goal for Real Madrid is scored. It's very interesting. So go watch it. But now my question to you still holds. Is this the best matchup in soccer?
I mean, it's an interesting question because if you asked us perhaps a few years ago, when Barcelona and also Real Madrid were like the titans of Spanish football, I feel like perhaps the matchup isn't as close as it has been in the past, as you kind of said with Messi and Ronaldo when they were absolute the peak, when Barcelona were comfortably Champions League, when Real Madrid were comfortably in Champions League. It was game after game. They were like points in it, absolute points in it. And then you have those games. Prime example of where you got some of the biggest goals, some of the biggest games have been those sorts of games. And I think it might, again, you might have to, if I'm do let me know if I'm wrong or not, but Gareth Bale, where he's put the ball past the defender, ran out the line, and there are some incredible moments in these sorts of Barcelona and Real Madrid games. I just feel perhaps the matchup isn't there as much, and I think that's because you'd argue perhaps Real Madrid are doing better in are in the Champions League, for example. They're fighting on a bit more kind of all kind of sides, and then you also got Barcelona perhaps who are out the Europa League now, can focus a bit more and a bit more base, essentially trying to win this league. So the matchup perhaps isn't there as much, but Barcelona again did really well. Great game, and it will always be an incredible matchup more generally. But if you want to kind of move it around where we are at the moment in terms of European football, internationally, for example, the likes. I remember what last season, the Man City versus Liverpool matchups. Those games, you dropped everything. You put them in your diary. You're watching that game. Man City, Liverpool, fighting at the top, those games. I think that'll be very similar with the Arsenal Man City games that are coming up at the moment as well, Man City games. So that those Man City, when they're fighting for a league against another, like they just come out of nowhere. So I think that would be a big one as well. But also if you look at it from if you're looking at fiercest rivalries, like proper football fierce rivalries, you've got your Man United, Liverpool, for example. You're looking at, for example, Celtic versus Rangers. Your Marseille versus PSG, for example, as well. And also, as you mentioned, the Ajax and Feyenoord, they're also very big, fierce derbies. They're the ones you're expecting cards, you're expecting players to get sent off. They're the ones that spill out onto the streets. I'll be really interested to unpack that in another podcast, actually, about the kind of the what do they call them, the ultras from fans, and to really break those down and see what is the whole idea behind this kind of mob mentality of these really ultra fans of these big clubs. Because you've seen, I think, when PSG went performing well, for example, the PSG ultras were on the case. They were booing. I mean, the fans in general, but also booing, for example, Lionel Messi, which is crazy. I think that because they recently lost 2-0. So I think it's a lot. So it'll be interesting to unpack what ultras are, and that'll take us back to in terms of what the most like clear rivalry in terms of derbies actually are. But that'll be a good one. But yeah, for sure, this will be a game forever that people will continue to watch. I just hope Barcelona next season fighting the Champions League alongside Real Madrid, that will make it a big game. Even better in terms of the league as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the context certainly helps. So if it is like these two teams fighting for the top spot in the Liga, or if they're both in the Champions League and they're trying to advance against one another, like that absolutely adds to the drama. So I'm here for that. I do think I choose this one just because of the history as well. It's just been such an intense matchup for so long with these two teams being like the two best teams in the Liga, for better or for worse, for so long. So I think that's why I still am so excited to watch these types of games. Plus, Barcelona now has Robert Lewandowski. He's my Polish boy, so I'm always here for that. So that just makes me like it even more.
Love that.
Now, let us take a break. Not an ad break, but an international break.
Yes.
Because the international break is now upon us. And what does that mean, Faisal?
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, there's a break at the moment for the Premier League. So we're away for a week or so. We're back next week in the Premier League. For this week, it's the Euros qualifiers at the moment. So obviously, Euros taking place next year in Germany. So that should be really cool. Obviously, there was with COVID that happened last year. The Euros took place the previous year, and now it's almost like that. You almost feel like which other Euro? We had the World Cup, we had the Euros recently, but next year it's Germany Euros 2024. So that's the qualifiers for that are currently undergoing at the moment. So it's going to be an interesting sort of international break to look at as well. So there's a couple of teams here that are going to be obviously playing. You obviously got England doing particularly well. So there's 53 nations and they're all aiming for one place. We're aiming for the place in Germany next summer. So there's only 23 spots here. And there's going to be 7 groups of 5 teams plus 3 groups of 6 teams as well. So there's the Nations League finalists, so they'll go into the sort of smaller groups, and then it's going to be these sorts of games. I think they happen every couple of months. There'll be a series of games obviously take place, and the top 2 sides, almost like a mini league in itself, like a group. The top 2 sides, each of those 10 groups will qualify directly for the Euros next year, and then you've got like the other teams will do essentially playoffs as well, which are really interesting to kind of see. So with that, obviously, is big teams playing, obviously from Europe, for European to go into the Euros. You've got your Croatia, you've got your Portugals, etc., all fighting out. The Netherlands, Italy, Spain, etc. From an England perspective, at the moment, we've got obviously England are playing on Thursday against Italy, which will be a bit of a matchup of the Euros final, which I still haven't unpacked in my entire life yet, so I don't want to. We're not getting to that. And then we've got Malta versus England as well, who are also in the group with England. So North Macedonia as well are in that group. So there'll be a Ukraine, I think, as well in that group. So it's going to be quite an early competitive group. But England, you'd argue, should go through. But there'll be 2 really big games to kind of watch out. But also, if you think about it, Belgium as well, Belgium team. Recently, obviously, you would argue the whole golden generation, which has not necessarily worked out at the moment. The players are getting older, but they have sacked Martinez. So a new manager comes into play, so that'll be an interesting one for brand new tournament for them to really prove themselves in as well. So and also Germany are obviously through to this. They're the hosts, so essentially they will also be. So that'll be interesting to kind of see what team they play. They can be even more experimental, play different players in, and essentially use this time while people are playing to get a place in Germany next year to be a bit more experimental. I'm seeing likes of Sane being dropped, for example. Musiala's got injured in the moment as well. So that'll be interesting for Germany. So it's going to be a very good matchup for the next couple of months as well, while we take this international break. One thing which is kind of worrying at the moment, obviously Rashford's got a bit of an injury, so him and also Mason Mount are currently not included. Have been dropped out from this squad, which will be interesting, but it's got the big names in, which are really useful as well. So hopefully we'll see some top England performances here. So Andrew, what do you think? Where do you think England will do in this in the Euro qualifiers? Do you think they're going to get through comfortably?
I don't think they're even going to make it out of the group. No, I think they probably will make it out of the group. If they don't, they should have some problems. I do appreciate them leaving out Rashford because he's on my fantasy team and I know he's nursing an injury. So thank you for leaving him out so that he can recover and then play in a doubleheader in 2-ish weeks so that I can get some more fantasy points. So I appreciate that. But I love me some international football. I'm always here for it. I do love the club stuff, and I like to follow the specific clubs that I enjoy, and it's just awesome to watch good football. But I just have a special place in my heart for international football, especially being a USA fan. As a kid, you just followed the USA players. If you were an actual soccer fan when you're a kid in the USA, before the MLS was really a big thing, before there were other soccer clubs around, the US men's national team was really what you paid attention to. So that made me also then fall in love with all the other international sides and being able to watch that. Plus I've been able to travel to a lot of countries around Europe. So being able to see some of the international vibe during some of the Euros or during the World Cup, it's just so cool. So I do think that England should have a good tournament. I'm expecting a lot from Italy because they did not make the last World Cup or the World Cup before that. So I think they are going to have some pent up anger that they're going to try to take out in the Euros. And I mean, of course, winning the Euros against England, of course, previously. So I think that they have this tournament, that they'll do well in this tournament. So I think that's another team to look out for. England, again, they should be dominant. They should make it easily out of the group and should make it to the final. You mentioned Belgium. They're an interesting one because that golden generation, per se, is slowly aging. We'll see if they have enough talent coming through the ranks. I don't know why they don't use Trossard more. Trossard has not played a ton for Belgium. He's been on some of their rosters, but then some not. Hasn't played a lot in the World Cup. This past World Cup, he did not, which is so frustrating to me. I think he's awesome. He's doing well. Now, he did well in his club with, who the heck was he just on?
Brighton.
Thank you. He was just on Brighton, and now he's on Arsenal. Did well for both clubs. Like, what the heck?
Excellent
Play
player.
Trossard, you Belgian people. I don't know what your problem is. I think he's awesome. So I think that they do have options to still be competitive. But again, like some of those star players that are aging out makes me a little bit nervous. With all of this being said, I would love to see North Macedonia also make it out of the group and to just do something crazy and have one of those Cinderella stories like we have in March Madness in our NCAA basketball tournament over here, when those like little schools end up competing and then making it on to the next rounds. I'm always here for one of those too. So maybe something like that will happen.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a really fun tournament. I think, as you kind of mentioned, underdogs as well, and North Macedonia. I mean, if you look at Hungary in the World Cup, if you look at it from their perspective, they played really well, beating Germany. It was, and I think they held a couple of other teams. Like it's France was there. I think they drew with France. Like they played really well. There was claims that they'd get absolutely crushed, but they held it down, and they are doing particularly well. So that'd be really cool. I mean, I'd love to see Hungary do well as well. So that'd be pretty cool to kind of see. But yeah, the Euros, it means that there is a step back from Premier League for about a week or so. My only fear with these sort of like breaks as well is you play players, they get injured. It's really annoying to go back to your club, knowing, say, for example, you've got Luke Shaw, who's doing great for Man United. I don't know, sprains his ankle against Malta. You're going to be annoyed. I'm just saying.
He's on my fantasy team too. Gosh dang it. If he does, I'm going to fly to the UK and we're going to have a problem.
These things happen though. And that's my only thing with these sorts of like, and I think other managers also agree. I think a lot of them are very wary of letting their players go to these sorts of like qualifiers. But I think it does wonders for players. If you look at like people have standout tournaments like Jude Bellingham, for example, like when you put players in those international stages, perhaps players that are perhaps low in confidence are playing well in those sort of international, even if it is a friendly, or even if it's like a qualifier, for example, it is still, you still have to perform. There's still like such an international UK and European audience watching you. You really should perform. So it's going to be good games. Like I love, like you said, I grew up watching England. I've cried at some Portugal penalty shootout losses. It's, we've all been there. It's I'm doing better with my emotions now, by the way. So we're in a better place. But in terms of with England, so I'm always getting behind the boys. Always when it comes to tournaments. I love sort of sitting in the evening, getting on the telly and watching that obviously as well. So really looking forward to getting stuck into that one.
Yes, a lot of good games to be had. You mentioned Jude Bellingham. So let's talk transfer rumors very quickly. And it seems whenever there's an international break, I don't know if news stories are just lacking. So then people start talking about transfer news, if that's how this works. But we have a few, and Jude Bellingham is at the top of the list. We all know everybody wants Jude Bellingham. He's already one of the captains usually for Borussia Dortmund. So people talking about his leadership ability. I think he's only 19. So that just leads to every club in the world trying to get a piece of Jude. Now, the leading candidate to get his signature is Manchester City. I hate it. I hate Manchester City. They just have a bunch of money. It's just sports washing because they're owned by a Middle East country. I'm not a fan, as I've talked about previously on other podcast episodes, but that's looking like that will be the case. With that being said, Real Madrid are also in the hunt for his signature. So they are probably in that second tier slot of getting his actual signature to make this transfer possible. And Liverpool, Manchester United, as they always are, interested in some of the biggest boys that are coming up and that are stars or about to be stars in the world of football. So they are still technically in the running, but they're then at that third tier of probably not likely that will actually happen. With all of this, Dortmund are still saying that they're keeping him for another year. We'll see if that actually does happen. I mean, they're going to be able to get tons of money that they can reinvest into the squad and to developmental players. So that may be something that ends up having him being sold. We will see. There's still a lot of time for that to come about. With that, there are some related transfers being tossed in the rumor mill because of Jude Bellingham potentially going to Manchester City. So if that does happen, there are going to be some roles that are no longer required at the Manchester City club. So Real Madrid, have a backup plan. If they don't end up getting Jude Bellingham, they're going to want another midfielder anyway, with Luka Modric getting a bit older as well. They're talking about going in and swooping Bernardo Silva instead, if they, again, don't get Jude Bellingham's signature, so that they still have a pretty solid midfielder. I actually like Bernardo Silva a lot. I've watched some of his interviews. He's like such a funny, weird dude, and I'm here for it. He would be a beneficial player to join Real Madrid squad. I think he could do well there if Jude Bellingham ends up being in those ugly powder blue kits. Another Manchester City player, again, if Jude does sign, even if he doesn't, Gundogan, he is going to be a free agent this summer. So Ilkay, he has the ability to sign a new contract with Manchester City if he so desires, but that has not happened yet. So we'll see if it is his time to move on. I do think that he will end up moving on and finding some better pastures somewhere else. Thoughts on Jude Bellingham, since he is one of your England lads?
Love Jude Bellingham. I think every person watching England play he's one of our best players easily. Also, special place from the West Midlands as well, from Stourbridge, West Midlands. So obviously from same area I am, which is really great to see. And do you know that you might also know this already, but they actually retired his shirt in Birmingham City.
I
So
did
he
not
used
know
to,
that.
yeah, played for Birmingham City, left, and then they retired his shirt. So that says a lot in itself. I mean, people at the time were like, really? But you can see that now. His play, his tactical play, the way he presses, how for a 19-year-old, he does not play. Like he plays like someone who's so established, so calm, so level-headed. I mean, I can't think about any team in world football would love to have him. He adds like 100% something to any team, whether it be like some of the most accomplished teams. That's why you'd argue Real Madrid are in there, Liverpool are in there. Obviously, Man City have to be in there, just because if you'd argue they need someone to kind of protect that kind of midfield. You've got your Rodri, for example, but you're not having someone maybe that is going to be help press and be able to kind of like be that kind of almost at the base of the triangle a bit as well. So you can imagine him linking up, for example, collecting the ball, spraying it out to Haaland, for example. I mean, it's going to be Premier League is going to be a very scary place if that does happen and that link up does kind of go through. Personally, I'd love to see him at Man United. You'd argue that you got Sabitzer, you got Casemiro, you got these sorts of players that you almost want someone who's a bit more established. Can you imagine Jude Bellingham and Casemiro just on the pitch, just
Beautiful.
commanding the game? It would be amazing. So that's personally how I think. If Ten Hag is listening, please, can we do that? So that'd be incredible. But yeah, I think there's definitely spaces for him, and I think he fits into most places as well. So I think it's a really big one. I mean, not sure why PSG aren't in there, but yeah. Speaking in PSG, what are you thinking about Messi?
Speaking of PSG, it is convenient, and maybe this is one of the reasons why they haven't had their name tossed in the hat quite yet. And again, we're super early before the summer transfer window even opens, so a lot of just speculation out there. But of course, with Jude Bellingham, everybody wants to be on that list, and PSG probably will be, I would guess, as we get a little bit more toward the summer. But they're having some issues trying to re-sign Messi. We all know Messi made the transfer from Barcelona over to PSG. His contract is getting closer to ending. So PSG says, yo, we want to keep you at the club. And this conversation has been going on for a while. And there was a verbal agreement back in December. So between Messi and Messi's father, who Messi's father is Messi's agent, and the club, they agreed and said, sweet, we're in, we'll do this deal. However, no contract has been signed quite yet. There has been a formal official offer sent over to the Messis so that can actually be signed and closed, the deal be done. But it hasn't happened yet, so we'll see what happens. The one thought about a lot of people is that he could be going back to Barcelona. I don't think that will happen. That would require a lot of strings to be pulled. Plus, he would have to take a pay cut. Barcelona still have all their financial drama that they got to figure out. So I don't think that is likely. It would be kind of cool, though, to see him go back. And then if he would retire there, that would be cool. I think the actual thing that will happen if he doesn't sign with PSG, which I think he probably will for another year or two, I think he'll end up in the MLS either now or later. He's been linked to Inter Miami, David Beckham's club. I think that would kind of make sense. He said he's wanted to go to the MLS or at least over to the US to play football at some point. We'll see if it happens. Who knows? Do you have any thoughts about our boy Lionel?
Yeah, I mean, now officially the GOAT. So any club here. But I mean, do you know what? Let me retract that. Any club, most clubs, because I think sometimes Messi won't fit into me. I mean, most people will love to have him because of how he is as a player. He's a star player, right? But it's similar with Ronaldo. Not every single club will want Ronaldo. I think he fits into a certain system. You do really have to build a team around Lionel Messi, in terms of how you play, in terms of how you set up and your strategy as well as a team. But I think I personally would, like you said, most likely will happen is he will probably stay at PSG. I think them not doing well in the Champions League has really hit them a bit, and it will continue to hit them. I think PSG are just craving that one Champions League. So maybe the next season they'll give it a go again and try their best again, potentially add in a couple of reinforcements from who's potentially available. And then for me, I think he'll do, if he does go to the MLS, I think he'll do what perhaps David Beckham has done for LA Galaxy at the time. I think he'll be really good for American football specifically. I think he'll really kind of like galvanize and almost have that same appeal that it had, that resurgence it essentially had when David Beckham went in there. But I think I was going to flag. So there's a video that came out recently, I think, of actually very funny that Lionel Messi is in Buenos Aires at the moment. And he was going to go to dinner, just going for dinner. And he somehow it's got out, right? And basically the whole city of Buenos Aires just turns up. And if you haven't seen them, go and check them out. The photos, the videos are excellent. Like people cramming in windows. There are like people just chanting Messi. There are like, he's getting mobbed. It's such an incredible scenes. He is like by far like what he is to Argentina. We can only dream. He's an incredible player. But just the love he must feel, I can see and watching him go through, and you can see got a bit of a wry smile on his face, and he must be like, on cloud 15, because that must be such an amazing feeling. He just wanted to go and grab food, so that's what happens. But that's what happens when you're the GOAT. So these things happen.
That's right. Yeah, I do think that he is the GOAT, and it is fun to see how much people in Argentina love him. I'm here for it. Yeah, it's a good video. Go check it out. Speaking of Messi, really quickly, I've also heard that some of the reasoning behind him waiting to sign this contract is because, like you had talked about, seeing what happens in the summer. So he wants to see what the project is for PSG because, he wants to compete at the highest level, kind of like Cristiano did. He wanted to go to a team that is competing in the Champions League, and Messi wants to do the same. We'll see if that happens. I have a few more transfer rumors. We'll run through these really quickly. First, we have Osimhen, of course, the star striker out there, and I'm very happy to report that Manchester United are certainly in to try to snag him. That is one of their top targets. Osimhen playing for Napoli has been awesome so far this season, but Napoli is not about even having conversations yet about him potentially being transferred to another club. They have said, we will not be talking to any club about him until the season is done, which makes sense. I mean, they're competing for Serie A. It looks like they're going to lock it down. You never know, but it's about to be locked down if they continue the winning streak that they're on and continuing to gain those points. Manchester United and Chelsea are in need of a striker and have said that they both are looking to sign a striker, and he is at the top of both of their lists. So not just a Manchester United target, but also a Chelsea target. I think his play style would fit in well with the current Manchester United squad. So I would love to see him. I love Jude Bellingham, but I think it makes more sense for Osimhen to sign with Manchester United because of the structure the team currently is. Granted, if you can and have the ability to sign Jude Bellingham, like you do it and you can build a team around him for the future, might take like a couple seasons of not being super competitive because you need to adjust some stuff. But with Osimhen, you can still have him for a while. You can certainly build your team around him as needed, but Manchester United's structure already, I think, leans into having him just almost be a plug and play piece and that final element of the puzzle that makes Manchester United competitive, like really competitive for the next few years. There is no amount even being tossed out by Napoli yet. So there are really no figures, no information, because Napoli have locked it down and said, we're not giving you any information till it happens. I'll run through two loaners really quick and then hit me with your thoughts on Osimhen, because we're Manchester United fanboys. João Cancelo, we know the drama, which I'm here for because it was between him and Manchester City. Screw them. But João said, I've had enough, and has said, screw you guys. I'm going out on a loan. He kind of forced the move. So he did end up getting loaned out. He's now at Bayern. And he has been playing a bit more now, getting into Bayern squad, kind of getting used to their tactics, but he is not in the Manchester City plans, which we kind of knew the way that relationship ended when he went out on loan. But Manchester City have said that. So it looks like João will not be going back, but Bayern don't want to pay the 70 million, which was talked about previously, to actually, instead of just having him over as a loan player, be like a full squad player and owned and have a contract with Bayern. We'll see what that ultimately means. I do think that Bayern will want to keep him, so that will just ultimately be a negotiation that Manchester City and Bayern have. The last player I want to mention is Lukaku, an interesting one as well. He will have to return to Chelsea because he is a loan player at Inter currently. He does and has said that he wants to stay with Inter at least for another year. That will require some negotiations between Chelsea and Inter because there is no buyback clause. So that means Inter can't just decide to purchase him. That will have to be another negotiation as well. All right, Basil, thoughts on Osimhen really quickly because he's our boy.
Of course. I mean, any club would love to get him, but Man United, like I said, I think he fits really well into our team. You can see within terms of the balls that were coming to him in that 6-yard blocks, he want finishing, he want a lethal finisher. I watched some of the goals he recently did again in the Champions League. Incredible player. And I think more generally, I was looking at his stats recently, and if you're scoring 21 goals in 23 appearances, there's no wonder there is £100 million like tag attached to your name. Like, completely fair. He's getting the goals in, and resurgence from Napoli here as a club, and being one of the key players in that. I think he slots really well, and we would love to kind of have him. He obviously, if you think about it from like Weghorst's perspective at the moment, he's a loan at the moment. He's being loaned from, I think it's Fenerbahce or Galatasaray. I think it might be Galatasaray actually, and he's probably most likely going to go back, and we need more of an established striker who's really going to spearhead most likely our Champions League, back into our Champions League next season, which I'm so excited about, hopefully getting that place. And I think he just fits that mold perfectly for us. So yeah, I'd love him. I think there's lots of potential there with him as a player. And also you'd argue there's a couple of things that I heard as well. Potential was Harry Kane in that picture as well. And whether there's like a Harry Kane versus, Osimhen, and in terms of how that works. But personally, I prefer I mean, it's an interesting one. Most people would say Harry Kane is an established striker, but Osimhen is a far better striker in terms of form right now, what he can do. Playing in the Champions League, scoring game in, game out. And perhaps Harry Kane maybe just hasn't got where we wanted to kind of go at the moment. So take what you want from that, Will. But personally, I'd love to see him this season or next season. I mean, if he can come this season, then yes, that'll be fantastic. But yeah, it's great.
So Victor Osimhen is only 24. Harry Kane is 29. So
well, there we go.
Getting a little bit more youth with Osimhen if you do make that signing. So maybe he can be around at his peak for a longer period of time. We'll see if it happens. Napoli, again, just locking down, not even talking. So we'll see once more rumors start to spread once Napoli do end up winning Serie A. We're talking Manchester United a lot, and I want to talk about it a little bit more, but I want to toss it over to you because Michael Carrick, period.
Yeah, I think we really need to speak about Michael Carrick. I think what he's doing at the moment. So if you don't know already, Middlesbrough are a team in the, I want to say, northeast, near Newcastle, Sunderland, in that kind of space, in that area, essentially. And they're a championship club, and Michael Carrick is doing wonders over there at the moment. So I really quickly just wanted to drop a couple of figures and facts for you guys, because I think it's really important that we establish that this is a manager who's been touted as potentially one of England's potential future manager, just 41 years old at the moment. So in his when he first started, Chris Wilder at the time, who was a manager, stalwart of like Premier League and Championship football in general, had just 2 wins in 11 matches, which was one of their worst starts. And they'd conceded 16 and scored 13. It was a really poor start, and what Michael Carrick has done since that has been incredible. So when he started there. He lost the first game against Preston, and everyone's thinking, "Oh, here we go. This is probably the beginning of another manager who's probably not going to make it." But then since then, the 10 games after that first game, he only lost one more in the next 10 league matches. And if you look at some of the incredible figures and stats that he's brought and the style of play and the tactical awareness, it'd be interesting, for example, I think what we should do more of, Andrew, is really break down these tacticals and these tactics specific that he's bringing to the game in terms of Middlesbrough as well as a team. So 56% of their ball possession, they are currently 56% averaging of ball possession. And this is the key, really. And this is it just makes total sense. Carrick used to be an absolute passing master in the midfield, incredible player. And really, he's really brought that and stamped his authority into the club in terms of what he's doing in terms of manager. So 81% averaging of pass accuracy, which is amazing. So that stat has now allowed them to 39 league goals in just his 17 games in charge. For a manager, in essentially he's one of his first proper managerial debuts, you'd argue. It's such a breath of fresh air to kind of see as well. So they're currently 3 points off automatic promotion in the Championship, which again has got a great league, and another manager doing amazingly is of course doing particularly well in Burnley as well. So there are incredible players and incredible managerial tactics being used employed by Michael Carrick in particular. One player to kind of flag as well is Chuba Akpom at the moment. So when he first started, he's currently on 19 goals. He is the Championship, top scorer at the moment. He scored 19 goals, and the 16 of those 19 goals have arrived since Carrick has actually been manager. So that says a lot when you have a right player in the right system. So incredible. Andrew, how important is it, do you think, having the right play in the right system, and what you think Carrick's doing for Middlesbrough at the moment?
I do like Carrick a lot, and like he was one of the players that I watched and played FIFA with when I was younger. So it's cool to see him doing really well. It's such an interesting trend that there are younger-ish managers now starting to do well, and it's so cool because one, like you can kind of resonate more, especially as a younger football fan, to see like people more your age doing well, other like than Roy Hodgkinson, who is now back managing kind of the caretaker manager for Crystal Palace. I mean, hey, he's 75. Live your life, dude. If you can keep doing it, that's awesome. But I like to see some of those younger managers that have like a tactical identity. They know what they want to implement at a club. And then clubs give them the time to try to implement that, bring in players that support it, and give them the years that they need to actually set up a system. And Carrick's still pretty fresh in his managerial career. And I think he was also one of the assistant managers at Manchester United, which was cool. So I remember seeing him on the sidelines after he finished up his playing career. So that was awesome as well. But again, I think it is awesome to see younger managers have that tactical awareness to try to implement systems of their own and then being able to be successful with that. Certainly, Carrick is, along with Arteta as well, like at the top level. So there's examples out there of younger managers being able to compete at the highest level. I do think Carrick is one of those managers that has the tactical awareness. He had a good playing career as well, just like Arteta, mixing those together, being able to be a good manager. And it always doesn't work out, as we've seen before, even with like some Manchester United legends, with Rooney maybe not being at that same level. Now with DC United, we'll see what his managerial career looks like. He still has a long way to go because he's still fairly young too. We'll have to see what it looks like. But do you think that Carrick will be a future England manager, and do you want it?
Of course, I think he's an incredible manager at the moment, what he's doing for Championship club. And for me, I feel like managers that come up from the Championship, it's a different league. If you watch some Championship games, like they are, some of the games are fierce. They're lethal, these games. If you come up from the Championship, you're fighters, essentially. And that's kind of proven by the likes of Brentford, for example, Leeds. These teams are fighters. These teams have been in those areas where you're going to to Sunderland, for example, or to Newcastle and these places where it's cold, it's going to be hard. You're not going to get an easy point. You're going to have to grind out results, and what he's doing is amazing. So yeah, big up Michael Carrick. I think hopefully we'll see more managers like it, because I think it's really refreshing to see the likes, for example, of Michael Carrick. When we had, for example, like Lampard and Gerrard just weren't scoring and weren't really kind of working out. So yeah, it's great to kind of see and to do better of. So yeah, man, just got to give your flowers to Michael Carrick and hope he does continue to do well.
I love it. He can have all of my flowers. But people that don't deserve flowers, we're going to take it to the nutmeg of the week. One of my favorite things that we get to do. I'm going to pass it to you first. Tell me what your nutmeg is, the crazy stuff that's happening.
Yeah, so mine is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Obviously, people know Zlatan, his general personality as a player. So this isn't shocking, but so it's a big game. They're playing against Udinese. He's come back from an injury at the moment, so he's trying to kind of come into the game. It's 1-0 at the moment, and there's a handball. It's a pretty clear handball, like fair play. It's a penalty. Zlatan steps up now. This goal that this penalty he's about to shoot would probably put him as, if not essentially the I think it's the within Serie A itself, he would essentially be the top. Like, I think he scores essentially 100 goals, something like that, which is fantastic for a player of that level. And I think he essentially is he's the oldest player ever to score in the Italian top flight.
Yeah.
So this is an incredible feat, right? So he steps up to take it, misses. It's saved by the keeper. But then there's a little reprieve here because the referee essentially spots some infringement on the box, so asks for a retake, and he scores. And you're thinking, this is the game now. He does an incredible knee slide. It's 1-1. This is the game. This is how it's going to be. Unfortunately, Udinese come back and they win 3-1. But that's not where the nutmeg is. The nutmeg is when you post on social media with a picture of you sliding, celebrating your retake of your penalty that you scored in the game that you have lost, and also with the caption "Say my name." It's a little bit arrogant. There's a lot of players. There was a lot of a lot of people on social media weren't fans of that. It's an interesting one. But I would argue it's Zlatan, but it's still a pretty big nutmeg, because you've got to think about you. Do you know what I would say, Zlatan? Is you've got to read the room. You've really got to read the room here. It's not cool. But yeah, I mean, congrats anyway for being the oldest player in Serie A in the top flight. So yeah, big up Zlatan. But yeah, that's my nutmeg of the week. What's yours?
Yeah, that's a good one. He's such a goofy boy. Like, he's entertaining, but I would hate to be his teammate. So it is what it is. My nutmeg of the week is related to the World Cup that will be hosted in the United States and the two other countries that neighbor us, which will be very exciting. However, something dumb is afoot, and it is related to one of the stadiums where some of the World Cup games will be held. So this is at SoFi Stadium. It is where the Los Angeles Rams play. If you're a National Football League fan, so that's like American football, what we're talking about with the pigskin, you throw it. That stadium has been awarded some of the World Cup games. That's where one of the previous Super Bowls was held as well. And there were even talks about the final being held there at one point in time. However, the issue is that the field is too narrow for FIFA's standards by 63 feet. Like, not even just a little bit, like a fat stack of yards. So that now has caused a lot of issue, because their thought was, all right, then let's just expand the field. They've looked into that option, but widening it would then cut out too many seats, and now there would not be enough people being able to attend the World Cup games, as was promised in what was going to be held, the games held at SoFi Stadium. Like, that's just dumb in and of itself, for FIFA not being able to recognize, hey, maybe this is not a good enough venue because it doesn't have the right measurements, or for the people that were reporting it to FIFA. However, the real nutmeg here is for the owner, Stan Kroenke. So he owns the Rams, the NFL team, and he invested $5.5 billion to get this stadium built. He's also one of the owners of Arsenal. How stupid You would think if you are an owner of a Premier League team, one of the top ones now as well, you would be aware if you're going to pay that much money to build a stadium, you're probably going to want to play some soccer games there, especially with the World Cup coming up as well. So when you get this built, which this is a fairly new stadium, why would you not make sure that you have the regulations built in a way that would allow it for World Cup and other soccer games to be played there? Dumb. Just dumb.
That is a real nutmeg. Incredible. A person of that level with that much money, crazy.
Yeah, pretty dumb. So that's certainly the nutmeg for me. But thankfully, the U.S. has a lot of other facilities for World Cup games, so it will go on.
Excited.
All right, fam. We're out. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Nutmeg. We will see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully, you're able to get on a pitch somewhere. Now, there is one cool thing we do want to do. If you have listener questions, feel free to hit us up and we will discuss some of your listener questions on future episodes. And they can be anything ranging from questions on specific matches to our personal soccer histories or interests or top stories that are going on around the world of football. We would love to answer your questions, and you can make them goofy, specific, general, whatever your heart desires. Now, until then, just try not to get nutmegged, especially like Kroenke in this stupid World Cup situation. But we will see you very soon. Peace.
See you later, guys. Have a good one.